Hi, I'm Colonel Rob Harmon. Welcome to another episode of Honor Cafe's Hall of Heroes.
My home was, the address was Thorndale, Texas, but it was a rural area and near Sharp, Texas, where I went to school. And I graduated from Sharp High School and went to Durham Business School in Austin. And when I graduated from there, I got a notice from the draft board that since I wasn't going to school, that I would be drafted unless I volunteered. And then I could pick the branch that I wanted. So I sort of volunteered and went to Houston, San Antonio, and from there I ended up in basic trainings, and after the basic training was overseas training, and after that I was shipped to Australia. And in Australia we stayed 2 days, and they told us we was going to go to Port Moresby, New Guinea, and that's Port Moresby, New Guinea. I was finally assigned to an organization which was the 5th Air Force, and we remained through the whole war. In fact, when I first got there, they told me that we would probably have to fight to the finish, because we were in Port Moresby. Was the last place between Australia and the Japanese had taken the Philippines, and they were moving, and had the northern part of the New Guinea, and they were fixing us to attack us, and they told us we were going to have to fight to the finish because we had no alternative, and that the Japanese were coming and coming in big force, and we had 5 B-25 bombers, and I noticed they were flying over the water and dropping down and dropping a fake bomb that went skipping on the top of the waves at 250 miles an hour. And if it hit a ship, it sunk it. And I asked the pilot when they landed, I said, "What the hell are y'all doing?" And he says, were skip bombing. We're practicing skip bombing. Maybe we have some luck. And so as the Japanese got closer, they had 8 troop ships and several naval ships, and they were coming in to wipe us out. But the skip bombers kept going out and kept coming back. Sometimes they were shot up pretty bad, but and they worked on it. And before the day was over.
What was your job in the military?
Things slowed down, and all the Japanese naval ships were sunk, troop ships and all, and then the fighter planes were going out and strafing the water, sinking the objects floating. And we turned the war turned around because this was the Japanese major army, and these 8 troop ships. They were getting ready to take Australia. So that day we were pleased to hear that the war had been turned around. And from then on we started returning the land that the Japanese had taken until we ended up in Tokyo.
When you were serving over there, your primary role was a bomber. You were a bomber, gunner?
Well, I was capable, but as I kept, they wouldn't let me fly. I mean, they wouldn't let me fly as a gunner. That's what I was trained as a gunner on a plane. And I said, well, I want to do it, and because they got more money. They got more than double the money whenever you got in a plane and started flying and so on. And I was money hungry. And they finally told me, says, well, you have to go talk to the colonel who was in charge of the operation. So I went up there and sat there for a while and got called in. And I told him that I just thought I wanted to be a pilot. I mean, a flyer. So, and he says, Nemmic, we've got plenty of other people that we can afford to lose. We don't want to lose you. You're going to stay with the non-meddling parts to avoid getting killed since we, and as I had this education Durham Business School and then different things, and they needed it badly because stuff was coming in by ships and planes and what have you, and I had my job was taking records, making records of what came in and what kind of shape it was in, and so on and so forth, and how many airplane engines we sent out for the overhauled and so on. And I was a record keeper for the 5th Air Force, and I was just a kid too, but most of those other people said they came from New York and up in that area, and they could handle a lot of things, but one of it wasn't records. I mean, so that's it. And every time every time we took another island, I was the person that went by plane, went there and made a report of what was available, what kind of airstrips, and so on and so forth. Everything was kept on record, and that was my job to write it up, and so as time went by, I did those jobs, and I always went to the Philippines, and then I went to the Iwo Jima, and from Iwo Jima I went to Tokyo. And my first job was to write up the location and tell what was available and what we had to do. And of course, when we went into Tokyo, they said, "Don't carry a gun." I said, "Don't carry a gun." What the hell are you talking about? Well, he says, the rules and regulations as written in the surrender was that Americans would go into Japan, and Japan would throw all their guns and everything out in the street where it could be picked up and hauled off, and they could pick up the items but nobody was going to have a gun. So anyway, I went into Tokyo without a gun, and so I didn't tell anybody, but I did have a 45 in my barracks bag, but I didn't they were very nice. I mean, they were, I was afraid they were going to be as mean as the Japanese were in the military, where they killed and tortured and did all kind of undesirable things according to the rules and regulations of war. But they weren't. They were very, very nice, and the civilians were very, very pleasing. So all went well, and I had the campsite about ready for the ships to bring people in, and using Japanese labor. That's another thing. And they told me what we were going to do. There was 3 of us. I said, how in the hell did you think 3 of us could do all that? And he said, says the rules and regulations are that the Japanese will furnish all the labor that we need. And they were real good workers and real nice, and it turned out real greatly. So we ended up getting camp ready for the troops to move in, and I was sitting in the office, and the phone rang, and I said, I'm looking for Jerry Nemmic, and says, you got him? And he says, how many points do you have? And I told him that I had 120 points, and some says, and he says, well, you've got enough points to go back to the United States, don't you? I said, I guess, I hope so. And he says, do you want to go back? I said, yes. I've been over here for 3 years, and I'm ready to go. And so he said, well, get packed up and go and join us. Go back up and go locate the 7th and Cavalry, and they'll instruct you. And so what happened was they ended up putting me on a ship, and I went back to the United States, and that was the end of the war for me.
Sir, when you went into the islands and they'd just taken them over, were you ever surprised that there were still maybe Japanese holding out on some of those islands?
Oh, no, they fought to the finish most of the time. If they didn't get killed by the Americans, they committed suicide, and but they didn't believe in surrendering. So we,
What one memory from being over there stands out the most?
when you say that.
What one memory while you were over in the Pacific stands out the most?
Oh, what my memory? I don't know. I guess the fact that our planes sunk all the Japanese troop ships and military ships out near New Guinea.
Did you see them being sunk?
Because that changed the war. Because they see 8 troop ships. That's several thousand troopers, and they were the troopers that were the best that Japan had, because they were fixing to take Port Moresby and take Australia, and then there wouldn't been, everything would have been in the hands of the enemy, the Tokyo, that China, China wasn't real fixed to do much of anything other than protect China.
Did you mainly move from island to island, or were you ever on the ships?
Say,
Were you on ships at all, or did you mainly just move from island to island?
on the ship.
Yeah.
Coming back to the United States.
When you were moving in the Pacific?
I was always moving in a plane.
Always moving in a plane.
Yeah, I always had a plane, a controller, maybe half a dozen planes carrying supplies and equipment. And
Well, sir, I want to thank you today for your story, and I want to thank you for your service, and we really appreciate it. From the Hall of Heroes, we would just want to thank you.
It wasn't good, but then to me, I felt pretty lucky because I was always I guess Iwo Jima was the roughest place that they were still shooting at each other when I went in there, and but I always that was one of the things that worked in our favor was that the Japanese fought to the finish, or finished themselves. You know, they didn't believe in surrendering. They didn't take very many American troops as they would wipe them out, or well, they didn't claim they did, but they did it. I mean, because they didn't have too much food, and they didn't want to have to feed the American troops that they captured, so they